Well, our friend Steve Forbes was here last week telling us that we need a strong dollar to bring the economy back to full strength. And he is not alone. A lot of economists have been decrying the dollar slide, which has been falling for the better part of 8 years now. But there are two sides to every coin. Some manufacturers argue the weak dollar is good for American exports and American jobs. One example of that can be found in Buffalo, New York. That's the home of Eastman Machine Company, and we're joined by its president, Robert Stevenson. He'll have to convince David Malpass, by the way, Wall Street economist and founder of Encima Global, who joins us by the phone. So, Robert, first, you tell us what your company does.
We make fabric cutting machinery, and we've been doing that for about 125 years in Buffalo, New York.
And why is a weak dollar good for your company?
Well, we've always exported. We've been exporting since the late 1890s, and to be honest, our machines, to be competitive, need to be priced right. A cheaper dollar helps us do that and makes our machinery much more attractive overseas.
Do you see any problem with having a weak dollar?
Well, for us, a lot of manufacturers today, also the system of outsourcing, where we outsource some commodity parts in order to make our machines more competitive. Our outsourcing is primarily done in the Far East, where a lot of the currencies are tied to the yuan, which is also tied to the dollar. So in a way, it's a win-win situation for us. We can get parts in, we can use our highly skilled people to assemble them, manufacture quality parts, and ship these machines into the European markets, where we now have a much better competitive advantage.
Now, we had a very strong economy back in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan came into office saying, I want to lower taxes and I want to strengthen the dollar. I think a dollar, a strong dollar, is good for the United States. And we had a lot of economic recovery from those awful years of the 70s. So it is possible to have a strong economy and a strong manufacturing sector with a strong dollar. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree to that, but I'd also say that markets change over time. And in the 80s, and certainly for our industry, many of our customers have moved overseas, and we need to sell overseas in order to maintain our production and to maintain our workforce. If there were more customers in the U.S., we'd be happier. But an example would be, the car industry. They say that a weak dollar hurts us in that sense, but I see it as both benefiting the fact that the cars are being exported, and also foreign manufacturers are locating in the United States to take advantage of a cheaper dollar and cheaper production facilities to sell their machinery here.
All right, David Malpass, it's your turn to try to convince Robert that he's wrong. Go ahead.
Hi, David. Hi, Robert. I would add a couple of points. One is it's a very expensive way to create jobs for Americans. In other words, yes, there may be a few export jobs, but at the cost of lots of unemployment for the rest of the country. And the second point is...
Hold on. Before you go to number two, David, David, hold on. How is it bad for the rest of the economy? That is, how does it cost jobs in other parts of the economy?
Look at the cost from high oil prices. It's part and parcel of a weak dollar that we have high commodity prices. Also, it drives capital abroad. So as the dollar move their money into foreign countries, and the auto sector is a classic example of that. We tried to help our auto industry by weakening the dollar, but all it achieved was creating jobs in Japan as they jump-started their industry by using that capital.
Let me throw that back to Robert. What do you say, Robert?
Well, I'm not an expert on the auto industry, but I would really I would disagree with that statement, precisely because a lot of the Japanese car companies, instead of making machines in Japan, are now making their cars in the United States. Toyota and Honda have located in southern states and are very successful doing it because they can't afford to manufacture machines, automobiles in Japan, and ship them to the U.S.
All right, hold on a second. Go ahead, David.
I just think if you looked at the number of autos produced in Japan versus in the U.S. Over the last 30 years of dollar weakness, remember the big move came in the 1970s when we had dollar weakness created malaise. It was high inflation. American companies couldn't compete, and they had to pay taxes on that higher inflation. So it drove up the effective tax rate, and the manufacturing moved to Japan and countries that had lower effective tax rates.
All right. Well, David, the bottom line is you had to lay off about 12 employees last year, but I understand you're thinking of hiring them back, right?
We're going to be hiring people back. We're getting a lot of interest again for our machinery in Europe. We just had a deal today with Brazil. We haven't sold there in a while. The Brazilian real is appreciated against our dollar, and they're back buying machinery from us. We're hiring people.
Who's getting more jobs creation, Brazil or the U.S.? Brazil is creating jobs better than we are.
True or not. What I'm saying is that in Western New York, probably 65% of the businesses there export. They're dependent upon export. It generates billions of dollars of business and thousands of people being employed. And they wouldn't be employed if we couldn't export. This has been a boon to Western New York.
Robert Stevenson from Eastman Machine in Buffalo, New York. Good to see you. David Malpass, glad you could join us by phone.